Hey everyone, this is Doc Fire from Custom Cockers, and I'm here to kind of talk about the new high flow valve from Inception Designs. And I'm not going to do an actual review on this valve. I haven't put it in a marker yet to see how it shoots, and so I don't know that aspect of it yet. But we're going to go over this valve and its features that I see it has, and compare it against some other valves, and especially kind of talk about the different sizing of valve, what guns this will fit in, and there's a lot of question out there on what marker will it fit in, will it fit in an old cocker and stuff like that, and we'll go through all that here in a few minutes. But let's take a look at the valve. If I can get in here, I'm going to take it out of the package. But there's the high flow valve, and this valve I think retails for about $39.95 or something like that, so 40 bucks rounded up. And then the back here, I can look at this, and I know this is upside down for you guys, so I'll bring it up here and you can see what it says on back, and I'll read it off here. So it says, this is a high-end, quick closing, efficient high flow valve designed to upgrade the 11/16 inch pump or autococker guns. And I'll explain what that 11/16 inch represents, for those of you that don't know what that is. But we'll go through all that in a second. But let's open up the valve and take a look at it. Take it out of the packaging, which is always nice. Alright, so first is that it comes with a jam nut for the valve, which is nice. You need a jam nut for these type of valves, or not a jam nut, a set screw. Let me rephrase that. The jam nuts are on the other type of valves. You need the set screw to hold this valve in place in your body, or in the bodies that it does fit in. If you notice, it has what looks to be red Loctite on the end. Let me get up there. You can see that. It's not red Loctite, folks. It's called Vibratite, and Vibratite is red in color, and it's not a Loctite. It's a vibration, anti-vibration kind of back out type of thread compound, if that makes sense. And it's good for sealing, so it's good for using your macroline fittings and stuff like that. And you paint it on, let it dry, and it's a soft compound that will seal up, and they keep this screw from vibrating out. It holds it in place. So it's not red Loctite. I would never use red Loctite, especially on this part, or on any part of an autococker for the most part. And I stay away from blue, but this isn't a video about Loctite compounds, as this is not a Loctite compound. It's a vibration compound and a sealing. So it's really good stuff. If you guys don't have this in your toolbox, I recommend getting it. And we'll go for the valve. I'm going to so it's got an open face. It's not drilled all the way through. There's the where that set screw would sit, and then I pull it apart, and it's got an O-ring on the shaft. You notice, and it's got a neck down shaft here. It's a larger diameter and where the hammer hits, and then it's allow a nice laminar flow through the valve, as it has this reduced shank. And then it's this clear, I would say it's like a 90 durameter, maybe a little bit harder sealing surface on this plastic sealing disc on the valve itself. This is the valve body right here, and this is the valve, and then the spring. And I'll have to try to compare this against other springs. I would say it's probably like a yellow Madman spring on stiffness, just out of the box, without having to compare against something. I just don't have anything. It's probably very similar to the Resurrection spring, I imagine, on how stiff it is, because it looks like it possibly is. And I have one here I can compare that to. So we'll go over kind of the features on it. Obviously, it comes with O-rings. If you notice that it's all one diameter, that's 11/16. What's actually, it's not actually 11/16. We just call them 11/16 valve because it's the difference between the standard autococker valve. This is the valve or valve body face. This is the sealing surface, so you always want to protect that to make sure there aren't any dings in that. And then the back is tapered in as the side that the hammer resides on. And hits the actual valve body. The O-ring, I talked to Simon Simon from Inception Designs at Super Game 50 here last week, and I was asking him about this O-ring, and it's supposed to have a loose fit like that. It's to make sure there's just a minimal amount of drag, and honestly it doesn't feel like there's any drag in here, but I think with a little lubricant in here, and it's kind of the idea is to fill this full of some grease, and it kind of packs in there, and then that creates a nice seal, and then a good lubricating surface as this moves back and forth. It is a metric O-ring. I don't know what size it is, folks. This is my biggest complaint is why metric, but there's a lot of metric O-rings on like the Resurrection autocockers. A lot of the 3 ways are metric, and there's a good reason for that. I think it's because it's a narrower O-ring and it allows less drag, but anyway, it's just what he went with. He didn't give me an explanation on why, so we'll go with that. So here we're going to compare this against a couple other valves. I'm going to try to zoom in here. See how far I can zoom in. And so let's compare it against who I believe is probably the tried and true, one of the best 11/16 valves that you can buy for an autococker or a Merlin spec is actually the AKA valve right here. This is the not the Lightning, but it's man, I just forgot the name of the valve, but I'll remember here in a second. And compare the two together, kind of sealing surface to sealing surface, and you'll see it take the valve stems out, and you'll see that it's a much larger diameter. The back part's much larger. That helps. Try to put them in my hand here right next to each other. I know we could probably zoom in, but and let's look at length. So how do I check length here? Why don't I go like this? Why don't I see if either one? So it seems like sealing surface to sealing surface, it's the length of the valve, which is important, folks, and I'll try to get into that in a minute. It helps with dwell and stuff like that and efficiency. The AKA valve's a little bit longer than the Merlin valve. Or excuse me, yes, the AKA valve, this guy is a little bit longer than this guy. And now the other thing is how much longer is it comparative to this, and I think it's best to probably get out a set of. Okay, so this is the Merlin valve, and I'll set this up so you guys can see it. Oop. So it looks like that's that is 0.7 558. This should be 0.758. I think that's what it is. 0.758, and we'll just, wow, look at that. It's exactly the same. Okay, so the length of this whole valve compared to this valve, the lengths are the same. Now, here's something that's interesting. Let's go up into the thing. AKA valve, or this is the AKA valve, and this is the Inception. And so the ports, Inception Designs port, internal port is a little bit smaller, and the AKA valve is a little bit larger. That's going to be interesting to see on how it does on the low pressure side of things. And then obviously the transfer port, they look to be the same. It's interesting, they chamfered the edge around that. I don't know if I can get in there to, if I could focus, you can kind of see, yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's chamfered around that edge. That's nice. It keeps any flow restrictions. If this hole was smaller or larger than the hole that goes through your body, the transfer hole, and here's the AK, it's just a straight cut. If the hole in the body was a little bit different in size, and If you give me a second, I'll explain that. Hey, look at here is you guys are gonna go, well, okay, he's got an Empire frame, and yes, it's milled open so I can see in there. So you have that transfer hole up there. That's what I call the transfer hole. And if that was a smaller diameter than this guy, it's you're going to have some turbulence there, but they should all be the same size. That's the whole goal, is to reduce the amount of turbulence as it goes through the valve, up through the body, into the bolt. And if all those holes are reasonable in size, then it's fine. So, kind of the differences between these two guys. Let's put the, as you have a little longer stem on this. The bodies are pretty much the same, except that these holes are a little bit bigger. I can do the measurement. So this is the AK. And that looks like, let's say 0.370, 371. And let's look at this one. And this is not even a 3. This is almost 0.30. It's more of a 0.297-ish, okay, give or take. So that's kind of comparison between those two. Put this off to the side. And I'm going to bring over this is a valve that came out of the Sniper 2 package, so it's pretty much the same. They did a couple changes in the Resurrection valves. They put a little O-ring in here that seals that back chamber up a little bit. And so let's see, let's just go for the inside on this guy. And so this one is a little bit smaller. So the Simon valves are a little bit, Inception Design valves is a little bit bigger. And then an overall length, I think, was, this is a 8. I think we're in the, this is the total of a 0.8, 0.87, let's see, 0.807, I think is what this is. And once again, this is a 0.76 or 758. So there is a difference there. We'll throw that out here, and you can see that there is a significant difference. Let's put size to size here. Line everything up. There is a reasonable significant difference in length on that. And so what else does that do? So if we look at this guy, this is the stock valve and spring on the Sniper 2, and you look at how far that protrudes. Well, that's only going to open, no matter how hard the hammer hits, it's only going to open that amount. It's a very metered amount. And comparative to this guy, well, it's going to open, that's maybe about the same amount. So this is the real test, is how long are these stems. So let's go valve seal to valve seal, and they're almost identical. The Resurrection's a little bit longer. Oh wait, I take that back. And it's hard to say which one's longer. I think they're about the same. You know, definite way to do this is, I can get, well, fairly definite. Looks like I'm right at a 9 point, let's see, 0.9, I don't know, 18, 17, 0.917, and this guy is it's a little bit longer. Yeah, 0.93 something. So I think that's fairly close, folks. So one of the things I wanted to kind of check was, you know, this is the new valve, and this is the old. Get back here. the old, and let's see, they feel about the same, but this is just a feel test, folks. It's just not the definite. You know, the right way to do it is to measure the thickness of each one of these wires. So this is a, there you go, I'm not going to count it out. And let's look at this guy right here. That was the first one, was the Inception, and the second one, that looks about the same. So I bet you they're the same springs. So these guys out, let's put the valve stems on the right side. So that's kind of the comparison on that. We talked about how far, oops, reverse side. Let me make sure this is right. So there's the, had it on the wrong side there. There's the comparison. And I know I took things away too fast. I need to take my time here. There you go. And so we talked about the length of the valve as it protrudes out the valve body, and that equates to essentially dwell. You can kind of one of the tuning tricks on some of the older autocockers were either to trim this down or to mill a dimple in the front of the hammer, and that would essentially control how far this valve actually opens. Okay, now this is most likely designed and engineered for the resurrection type hammers, which I don't think have a dimple. I'm almost positive they don't. And although it wouldn't affect this large surface here, it's not going to affect if you have an older Wargame Products hammer that has a little dimple. This is not going to fit in that dimple, so it's going to act like a flat face hammer. But it controls how far this opens, and so that's dwell. It's well, kind of dwell. It's the amount of opening, and then the spring pressure and the air pressure is your dwell. Essentially, how much force back here compared to how much force is going here is how long this valve is going to dwell open, stay open. So it does affect a little bit of the dwell. All right, so with that, let's look at, take that valve off, and here we go. Here's a Trilogy valve, and so ironically, the Trilogy valve and the old Sniper 2 valve is the bodies are about the same, but we're not there to compare those. So we can start looking at this. This inlet hole smaller. Let's see if I can. I would say the holes are fairly close on the, the outlet hole is smaller on the Trilogy. The inlet hole on the valve body is, let's see. Okay, so that looks like a 0.309. 0.309. I don't remember what it was on this. This is a little bit smaller. Okay, so the Trilogy inlet hole of the valve body is larger than, and not by much, than the Inception Designs high flow valve. The stems, significantly longer Trilogy stem. See that? And obviously it's got the standard size shaft pin on most autocockers. So let's stack these up next to each other here. Whoop, backwards. There we go. All right, and then finally, let's talk about this 11/16 issue. Pull that valve off. Here is a standard autococker valve, and this should be the deciding factor on, or the definitive factor on size. So this is the 11/16. This is, I don't know what size it is. It's much smaller, much more smaller diameter, and it's step milled. So you have one O-ring. Let me get this guy to focus. One O-ring on these cocker valves, and then it's step milled. All that milling that goes on there, and this is a standard pin. And then the jam nut would sit right around this thing, and that's that one where you need a special tool to remove it, and I've seen more distorted bodies because people don't, they try to take that out without having the tool. So this is a standard. This is the stainless steel variant. Typically they're brass. I just grabbed the stainless steel one out of my box, and it's much smaller. But don't worry about the size of the valve body on performance-wise, because if we start taking these apart and we look at the inlet face, this is obviously the standard, or this version, which is probably a 2K version of a valve. And there's all different of these valves. There's so many different manufacturers. This is just a later version one. It's actually a larger opening than this, and just because it has a bigger opening doesn't mean the valves don't work any better, any more efficient. It's just how it works. The other thing is, I think the transfer hole in this valve is a little smaller than the hole in the body, in comparative to the Inception Designs. The sealing face and the length, let's kind of look at the length of this thing. I think they're about the same. So here's the length of this guy, and we're a 749, and I think we're fairly close. Yeah, the Inception valve's just a little bit longer, not much, which is pretty interesting. I mean, tried and true valves, not this specific one, but these the older Ottercocker style. So really the big difference is these won't fit. This one won't fit in your old Ottercockers. It just won't do it. What bodies will these fit in? Any Merlin spec, AKA or ACAMP, Leeds Metal Products, whatever you want to call them. Now it's DC. I think they do own the name now, and they bought the company. Any of the bodies that come from there, okay, except the VLM bodies, they're for early bodies. So, and they made bodies for a lot of different companies. So I think it's ProLite or Powerlite or whatever it is, the barrel manufacturer. They had a Merlin spec body that they had custom milled for them. It has PL on the side, I think. And then you have the early Works bodies out of Texas that were machined by Chipley Machine, CCM, out of Redding or Anderson, California. Some of the early Works bodies were a Merlin body, and they were 11/16. That lower tube is 11/16 all the way through. All of the Resurrections and Sniper 2s are the 11/16 valve. Yep, I ruined a body for science. Let's see, some of the CCM and all you CCM fanboys out there, I can't remember. It's maybe the T2s and some of the J or the S5s, or one version of the S5. I can't remember. S6s. Maybe it's the S6s. It's not S5s, S6s, I think. We're 11/16. Actually, if you go to CCM's website and look at their valves, it'll tell you they have 11/16 valve they sell there too, and it'll tell you what it fits in their bodies. And let's see what other guns out there. Oh, the new. Actually, if you guys haven't seen these bodies yet, it's the Kraken by Killshot Customs. He just selling body kits now. Beautiful body kits. I just purchased one, and I have a video coming up on that here pretty soon. Let's see other bodies. Oh, Vikings. This will fit in a Viking and an Excal, and Cyborgs, I think. I think the what is it? I'm going to pronounce it wrong. It's a pump marker. It's a lower end pump marker, and I don't say it's lower end. Actually, a lot of people like them. Azus, or I can't think of the name. They came out here they've been out for a couple of years. But anyway, it's and they have the Blitz, and they make a pneumatic marker, and then they make a pump marker. It seems to be pretty popular, but it will fit in that. The newer bodied, the kind of the last bodies made by Working Products, which would be the that mid block Black Magic. that came out. The Jeff Orrs, I think, were all 11/16. Yeah, I think it's a black matted shit in the Jeff Orr. And obviously the trilogies out there. These guys will have those sleeper guns. The trilogies, which are you know, ugly as sin, but are a great sleeper cocker, and you can really make a nice marker out of those, respectfully. They all should fit in there, okay? And like I said, obviously the Resurrection, and then obviously the new retro line of Inception Designs, which the Predator, which it comes with, and then any of the retro line bodies. Not as earlier bodies. They're based on are milled from a standard cocker body that uses this valve, and that's just that's all his. What the Kryptonite, I think he has one of them. He has a couple other ones out there that the Ripper body, the Ripper style, the Flea body. Those are all based on these valves right here. That valve body size, but this retro line is based off essentially. I think the specs. I don't know if he changed some of the internals on it, but it's based off the Resurrection and Sniper 2 specs. I think he cleaned up the design a little bit, and some of the some little things on it, but I don't know exactly. I don't have one of those bodies yet. So let's get all the pieces here. I'll just put them side by side there, and there's the jam nut. Let me zoom out here. Let's see if I can put all these guys together. Line them all out here for you. And then finally I'm going to put a standard autococker one right here so you guys can see. And see if I can zoom in just a little bit. There we go. So, and if I could line my mat up. Oh yeah. Oh, so gently move this over. Yeah, so new Inception Designs has some nice features, so I'm going to talk about a couple other things that I just remembered I need to talk about. That's an old trilogy. This is the Resurrection Sniper 2 valve, or the Sniper 2 valve from Empire, and this is the tried and true AKA valves, which they're still being sold, so don't think they're gone. And then a stock-ish autococker valve. So why is this so fat on the back? Let me bring this in here. Why is he make such a big valve? And then it's neck down. What's the backwards? What's the intent behind that? So the intent is he's trying to kind of, I hate to use the word balance valve, but he's trying to do somewhat of a balance valve. He's trying to meter the flow that goes through this valve body. So the hammer hits it, it opens up. So let me go backwards. So as rest with the gun pressured up, there's spring pressure and air pressure sealing this valve. Okay. So this side of the valve, everything on this side is under pressure. Everything on this side is on atmospheric pressure. Okay, and so when the hammer hits it, it opens up. The pressure is going to, that air volume is going to transfer through this valve up to this port, up to the transfer hole in the body, into the hole of the bolt, and then out to the face of the paintball, and then down the barrel. And while it's doing that, there's always the spring pressure is always trying to close this valve, okay, and trying to reduce the amount of time this valve dwells open and stays open. And kind of the trick is to find, they say about sweet spotting the rag so you don't waste a lot of air, is it's not only the spring pressure, but it's the air pressure that's behind it that's forcing against this weighted hammer that's hitting on this side. And the goal is to put the right metered amount of air in to get your velocity that you're looking at, and not waste any air, not have any air that go down the barrel that you don't need it, which can become a louder shot, could be a pop out of the barrel, just maybe a more noisier shot, and less efficient. You run through a lot more air. And so the goal is, when you on the old oilcockers, was to have the right spring here and the right hammer spring in the back and everything set up right, and then you adjusted your input pressure over a chronograph or radar, and until you or you set your input pressure and you've fired over a radar, and you looked at your feet per second. You kept increasing that HPR pressure, and until you got to the maximum feet per second. And if you increased it any more, then that feet per second would drop back down. So you go to maximum, and it doesn't go up anymore. The more pressure you put into it, it doesn't go anymore. And what's happening there is there's so much pressure that this opens up, and the spring pressure, the air pressure is so high that it closes it really quickly, and you can't get the velocity. So you want to back down that pressure until you get to the highest point, your highest velocity, and then you know that this opens, the right amount of air, the right amount of pressure comes through to get your ball to velocity, and then closes. And that's sweet spotting a rig, essentially. And it's really sweet spotting your lower tube to your valve, basically your lower tube components, mainspring, hammer, valve spring, air pressure, and then your bolt. Your bolt's important too, because a different bolt, you change a bolt out and that's going to change. And then obviously a good paint to barrel match with a quality barrel. And if you haven't already bought some Inception Design Stella barrels, they're nice. They're good stuff. Nice control bore. That's the big thing. So that's the goal. So that's kind of the old way of doing it. So what Simon has done is he said, hey, look, I'm going to try to make this valve mechanical on its own. Not only does it have the spring pressure here and the air pressure here, but if I create put more surface area, make this piston larger at the end, this valve, as this opens, the air pressure rushes through right, it's going to start putting pressure on the back, on this surface area here. And it's going to want to push that like a piston closed, and so it's going to meter that air. So he actually told me that he messed with some larger diameter ones, and he said when he would fire it, it would close so quick that you could never get the velocity. So this is the size that he found that was the best, and probably with the spring combination, folks. So I would probably stick with this, and maybe a resurrection mainspring in the back. Maybe a good combination. I'm pretty sure that's probably what he tested with. I didn't ask him, but it's a good starting point at least. And so that's the goal, is to meter that air and only have enough air to push that velocity and to shut the valve off, so you're reserving air. You're not sending more air down the barrel, which is more turbulence, which could affect the flight of the ball as it leaves the barrel. Potentially could. You just get it enough to push that ball at velocity down that barrel and then out, and then hopefully in the goggle of some other player, not your own. For me, it's usually in the board right next to the player and all around them, and I create a shadow of them and not hit them one time with the whole hopper. But anyway, that's the intent behind it. And the O-ring helps that seal, helps that kind of that, like a ring on a piston. Okay, kind of helps that out. So that's the intent behind this. Why this has got such a wide face on the back. It's essentially to lessen the. Let's take these products out. Take them out. It's essentially to lessen the time that valve's open. Is to control that, and so that's why he says a high flow and I think high efficiency valve. I haven't tried it yet, folks, so I encourage you to go out and get one of these. They're $40, very reasonable in price for a valve. Actually, I thought it was a very good price. I hope at one time, and I know he's doing it, or hope not at one time, hope here in the near future, that he sells this as a lower kit. Okay, so what's nice is, you can buy the valve and you can buy the hammer and the spring and all that separate, and or you can use some other manufacturer in conjunction with that, and that all works. It requires a little bit more tuning, and you know, I enjoy doing that, but some people, sometimes they want to get an autococker and they want to pick it up and just shoot it and not have to worry about all this tuning. It's pretty tuned out of the box. And when the Resurrections came out, they were very much like that. They were pretty much, you know, engineered to be right at spec. And so what I hope that he does in the future, and I know he does it with this pneumatic kit, is he does an internal kit where very similar to what bell cells used to have, where you got the hammer spring, or the main spring, the valve spring, the valve and the valve body, the nut, the locking nut, not the jam nut, but the set screw, and then the bolt. And to me, those components, they all operate as one. They all need to be, when they're being engineered. That's you know, and when Simon's engineering these, he's, you know, developing the valve, and then he's building a bolt that works well with this valve in the body, and then obviously he's most likely shooting it through the Stella barrels. Would be my guess. I don't think he's using another barrel. I mean, I'm sure he's sending it out to folks to tinker on with other barrels, but you know, so hopefully this will be a kit that will come out. So you get this, and you get a hammer and a valve spring, and a bolt, and that's your kit. And I honestly, I think that's gonna be a pretty cool setup. So the other thing is if he and hopefully he is selling still the other bodies, and there's a lot of market out there. This valve setup works, and I don't think it will. You can't make that, won't work. I mean, if he were to try to copy this valve body right down here and put the engineering over in here, it's just not going to work. This rear diameter is larger than that jam nut. He could technically do it by essentially removing that jam nut and just machining this out to make this all one. So this diameter right here would be the same diameter all the way through, and so you wouldn't have this little step down. This would just be solid all the way back out to here, and then you could have a larger. You could actually use this guy right here. So Simon, if you're seeing this, machine up one of these guys right here, not to use a jam nut. Send it to me, I'll try it out. I'll tell you if it works. Hint, hint. And that's that will take up you know, a whole other group that they don't have the Merlin spec or the Resurrection, the 11/16 valve lower chambers on the gun. And with that, you know, that's like I said, guys, I haven't tried it yet. Everything back together here. I haven't tried it yet, but it's, you know, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a neat setup, and you know, I went through the late '80s and early '90s and into 2000 with autocockers and all the different valves that were out there, and numerous promises that were, oh, this valve's going to, you know, be the perfect valve, high efficiency. And back in the day, it was all about high efficiency, and because most fields either were still running CO2 and didn't have compressed air, so you're bringing a tank out, and you have this high pressure system that is, you know, from Smart's Parts back in the day when they were actually, I enjoyed the company, and it cost more than your HPA tank costs more than your marker itself, and you had to drag all the stuff out there, and you really didn't want to waste air. You wanted to be able to control that. And now most fields have compressor systems and all that stuff. So the reality is I still want an efficient marker. I want to be able to not go to the Phillips station as much, which is kind of comical. I want a quiet shot out of an autococker that should be a closed bolt. Nice quiet shot. And obviously I want that autococker famous accuracy and reasonable range, and the sound of that. I mean, being shot by an autococker, that that sound is just, to me, that's one of the reasons why I kind of went to that platform. I really enjoyed it. But anyway, all in all, folks, go out and buy one. And you can get it look at your local retailers to see if they're an Inception Design retailer. Hopefully they are. Buy local first if you can. If you don't have local, go to your online stores and purchase there. And obviously Inception Designs, they have an online store. And just to let you guys know, I don't work for Inception Designs. Don't work for Simon. I'm a player. I always have been. If you people that meet me, I'm a player. And I pay for all my own stuff. This is all stuff that I bought. It's not free. I don't do this because I get free gear. I don't want free gear because I want to be able to give an honest review. And it's called the Down and Dirty Review. It's stock fire. That's what I do. This is the most fancy you're going to get, folks. So I know it's a little long. I'm a little long-winded. And so hopefully you like the video. And hopefully I'll get a shooting video or an impression on it. But comment below if you like it. I don't care if you subscribe or not. I don't care about that stuff. I don't make any money on YouTube, and nor do I really care about. So if you like it, cool. And let me know what your guys' views are and how it works for you. And please be respectful and honest. That's all I have. All right, guys. Have a good one. Bye.